Dads. Some people have one, some people have none, and some have many. This dad is a singer-songwriter that goes by Davis, all lowercase, aka my father, Michael Davis. Born March 15th, 1951, in the city of Richmond, California, Davis has always been around the sound of music. Throughout the years, he's created and heard 65 years of music, 6.5 decades of artistic sounds, a lifetime of experimentation close to the heart. Today, I am joined by Davis, my dad, in his windy home nestled away in Deer Park, Washington. Dad, thanks for hanging out with me today on the show.
My pleasure.
So I wanted to have you on here kind of informal. Wanted to get a chance to hang out and experiment a bit. You and I got a chance to talk quite a bit about your history. I would like to go back in the Wayback Machine and hear about your earliest memory of music.
Well, it all started a long time ago. My folks used to have 78s. You know, the really old records, really thick. You drop them, they break. They don't bounce. And
The ones that shatter.
and a lot of those were Dixieland, like the Dukes of Dixieland, Pete Fountain, big band sounds like Frank Sinatra, the Dorsey Brothers and all that. And so I'd sneak in the cupboard now and then, get those records out and listen to them. The other ones, my sister and I had like a small kid's phonograph where you could play the 45s. And a lot of those were like the Three Little Pigs and that type of thing, which, you know, those type of things have been around for quite some time, but it left an impression on me of just storytelling and having sound effects and having music behind it, you know, where it wasn't just the characters' voices, they were singing. And it left an impression, and I remember laying on a carpet as a little kid playing with toy soldiers and little cars and things like that and having this music on and just kind of creating my own little existence. And yeah, it got me interested. It caught my eye and my ear right away, so yeah.
And that was, I recall you saying Spike Jones. It's one of the biggest impacts to your earlier memories.
They had a record by Spike Jones, who was in that big band era, but it was also a combination of jazz, and all the players were like professional, very professional. But he chose to do like parody type stuff of songs, kind of like Weird Al, you know.
So the earliest version of Weird Al.
Exactly, and very, very famous and popular at that time. And the one song I do remember was You Only Hurt the One You Love. And it all starts out, there was another group at that time that did the same song. Their names were the Ink Spots. It was a black group and very, very excellent harmonies and everything. But they took this song, Spike Jones, and they started out with it just kind of as the same flow as the Ink Spots. But then all of a sudden in the middle it broke up and it was just every man for himself from there on out. And I really liked that because these people were expert musicians. They didn't take themselves too seriously as to, you know, not having a good time while performing. And that left a big impression with me. So.
First instrument?
Probably my dad had a ukulele that he picked up when he was in the service, probably in Hawaii possibly, or maybe it was California, I don't recall. And he used to come out sometimes when people were over and whatever, and he'd play a couple songs on the ukulele. And I always was eyeing that thing, and even before I even thought I could touch it, I'd watch him put it back up in the top cupboard again and then bring it out just on certain occasions. And finally one day I picked it. He said I could look at it, take a look at it, and he tried to teach me some chords, which I still don't know any chords, but I found that I could tune it in a way that I could make a song myself and doing like a bar chord situation. And although it's just, it's plastic strings and it's a really old ukulele, still getting the satisfaction of putting something together that doesn't sound out of tune and something you could sing to and hum to or whatever. It was just really encouraging to figure that out on my own and just kind of go from there. But that was the first instrument. And then from there, of course, I wanted to get a guitar and I wanted this and that and the other thing. But that was really the first time of picking something up and figuring something out in a way to express what I was hearing on all these records for all those years.
Is there more to that influence with why you were straying away from these standard tunings intended for the instrument being a ukulele? You went and tried to do other tunings that were non-traditional. They not likely used for the ukulele, correct? What inspired that?
I played bass guitar for a number of years, and it was easy for me to figure out. It was four big strings, and I didn't have a hard time with that. But when I wanted to start writing, I picked up a guitar and tuned it to an open chord. And in those days, I didn't know that was a standard way of going about things. But I would tune it to a chord. So again, just like the ukulele, I could figure out where to go in chord progressions and then listen to the radio or phonograph and try to play along. Same speed, same accuracy, same chords, but of course they were all barred, which limited me to a certain extent, but at least it was in the same pattern. And
so if we roll back a bit in time, go back, because we're still at your first instrument, whether it was yours or you're just getting to use your dad's. Don Davis, rest in peace. So your influence to do that one in that tuning, though, at that time, you hadn't been playing bass.
No.
You hadn't really touched anything.
No, hadn't touched.
Where do you think that came from? Because that to me is like, that's when the door opened.
Yeah.
There was something that said, I need this to enable me to navigate this instrument. A lot of people don't do that. They get stuck on what they were told, how they were told to use something. Mm-hmm. A lot of people it's very common for them to not stray from the traditional use of an instrument.
And I think that's why a lot of people give up eventually, because lessons keep you very, very tight for the most part and structured. But if you never have the desire to jam or to improvise or go beyond, say, the tone of your voice or the note where the ranges you can sing in, and they kind of get tired of playing the same thing over and over and over again, mm-hmm. and not feeling like they're creating something. They're just kind of mimicking what this piano teacher told them or the guitar player told them or whatever, and they just and then they lose interest, and the guitar sits in the closet, gathers dust, and maybe the next generation of kid will pick it up and take off with it. But there's got to be that influence in the home. And like I said, it was kind of sporadic with my dad in his ukulele playing and singing, and times where we'd be at other people's houses because we didn't have a piano, but he would play. He just knew a couple songs. He'd play them, mm-hmm. and then he'd be done. Close the lid, go off about his business. But that inspiration and looking seeing the look on his face when he was doing these things was sometimes the happiest that I'd ever seen him. And even as he got older and I sat down with him and we played together, it was still the same look on his face, and really important.
If you don't mind me asking, so in your family, you definitely when you and your sisters were kids, there was a severe lack of emotions being shown, or even lack of support to show those emotions.
Yep.
So would that be when it came to music, was that the only time you saw anything out of your dad, Don? Outside of it, that's where the question goes.
I think both of my parents were raised under really stringent situations in their homes with poverty and alcoholism and different things like that, there, where they were not shown a lot of affection and emotion. And so that carried on down the line to the way my dad was towards me. But if there wouldn't have been that music in the house, either taking that 78 out of a closet or seeing the look on my dad's face when he played his ragtime song on the piano or something like that, it would have really been very, stagnant, dull, gray, growing up that way. And the best you could hope for is to get a good job and have a family and never really express or create something on your own. And although those songs that my dad was playing were songs that the people had written, that didn't matter because that's all he knew, and he got what he could out of that. And that was like, oh, well, there's another side to this guy besides just being the, impatient, I can't tell you I love you. I don't want to, pat you on the head or tell you what a good boy you are, or, I'm proud of you. If there wouldn't have been that, it would have been really dull. And I would have had to fight much harder to try to find something that I could break out of that humdrum dullness. So,
yeah, there are a lot of things that people can use to have any kind of relationship with their family, friends, but I don't think that there are too many things that break down so many boundaries like music does.
there you go.
It awakens parts of everyone unconsciously, consciously. It's like a universal tool that I can't help but always go back to thinking how much positive energy it can put into someone's being and existence. Not to get too woo-woo about it, but it's really cool how it makes me think of when I was a kid and I watched Jurassic Park and what's his name with the cane that owned the park? Him and Laura Dern were eating ice cream, and they were just saying how ice cream in any situation always just cheers you up, no matter how much anxiety, anger, sadness is going on. Somehow that sugar just kind of pulls you out of your funk. And man, music, it's just the number one I think in so many people's lives, including mine, it really just does so much that we're not even aware of to take us out of the ways that we feel that are bad for our health, psychologically, physically.
And sometimes it's not even necessarily that you can understand the lyrics right off the bat. Sometimes just a rhythm or a certain way that a person is playing an instrument that catches your ear. To touch on what you were just talking about, there's a lyric that I wrote down that says, let me know when you get home. And what that means to me is, if there's anything I can do, it's like ice cream. It almost takes you to a place where you feel like you're kind of secure, things are okay, and that you're not so weighed down with the world and everything that's going on. You're having a bowl of ice cream and you kind of think, yeah, I've always liked mint chocolate chip ice cream. I can remember as a kid when I didn't have all these worries and cares and situations. That's part of your home. It's something you can relate to, and I think almost everybody has something they can relate to that causes them to feel, I can just relax and be myself and be honest and not worry. And that to me is being home. So in those lyrics, I'm saying is if there's anything I can do that can help you make you feel at home, let me know what it is, and we'll work on that. Because I want to be effective, and I want you to feel good about yourself and secure. So, anyway, hope it didn't go on. That's not too woo-woo, is it?
No.
Okay.
It's got my mind thinking about another perspective that I learned even more about with Pauline Oliveros, who's been a revolutionary teacher and composer and artist since I believe 32, 1932, I think is about when she was born. I just saw that documentary that I was talking to you about, the story of Pauline Oliveros. But where I was going with that is that she even after she's passed in 2016, everything that she did to try to get the whole world to see music in a way that broke down all existing barriers of expertise,
Yep.
whether it was saying that the world is a musician, whether you play it or not. I love that so much because I love hearing the opinions of people that are the audience, or even people that don't even know your music exists, and then they come across it and give you these kinds of opinions that you never prepare yourself for, and it's so cool to see what their perspectives are. Another example was just last night, playing Pictionary with your granddaughter and my niece Eva. We got 4 people there that 2 of them are not confident in drawing. One is somewhat confident but a little shy about it. And then me, I couldn't care. Like it's just so fun to find ways to relate to people's mind and get them to connect to it. Anyway, you don't have to be a professional artist. And in fact, I think being a professional artist could in fact prevent some people from having a good time doing something like that.
Yeah.
Because they might be thinking too deeply into it, trying to perfect it. And it's like, no, you don't have to make a perfect portrait of something. Just draw some simple lines, see where people's brains go. And it was interesting to see what each person was drawing, the way that they were drawing. It was like another door into their minds of like creativity. And it just further solidifies that the world is an artist and is a musician, is a creator of sound, and that's something that Pauline has also strived for people to understand. Is like, you listen to everything around you. You never know what ends up being art to you or considered musical to your ears. It could be something as simple as the rain on your window in the car.
When people take a chance to go beyond their fears or
Their comfort zone.
Yeah, or the things that could intimidate you, like professional artists or this or that and the other thing, and at least make an effort, and then to have people around you that are saying, that's good enough. What you're doing, you don't have to be perfect. What you're doing is good enough because that's you, and that's why we care about you and love you and encourage you. If you want to go beyond that, you can. If you don't want to or can't, that's not a big deal. You're just as acceptable as the professional this or the perfect that or whatever. And that's really important with family gatherings or just friends or, what have you, with people gathered together. So
let's segue from that. So just unintentional or unconscious and unconsciously in influencing one another to take on different art forms. You go back to you and your dad. Where did your influence start? Let's talk about that and the band or multiple bands that your dad did that I think you stated was really getting your fire going. at first?
Came upon these photographs, and my dad used to talk about this a little bit. The name of the band was the Baling Wire Buckaroos.
This is
Honest.
before you were born?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so before any of the
This
kids.
was when he was like probably as a teenager, because he went into the service, I think, when he was 18, and of course that all went to the wayside. There were 4 members, 2 white guys, 2 black guys in rural Montana in the late 20s.
Shit kicking Montana.
Yeah, playing music together. And they all had these fancy, what's the nudie shirts? The ones that the costumes people that wear.
This sounds interesting.
Country
I'm not
western.
sure, no. I'd have to look at the picture again.
But anyway, with the snaps and all that stuff, and and kind of like a satin or whatever tone to them. And these are guys that were eating rabbit and fish, and that's basically what they had to eat for quite a long time. And they were playing together and making music. And if you look at their faces, it looks like probably one of the happiest moments of their life in that span of time that carried on down the line. When I saw that picture, and even the influence of when I picked up a bass guitar, because my dad played upright bass in these pictures, it just went, oh, I could be a second generation bass player, I guess, and on down the line, because I think you've also played bass before.
Yeah, I enjoy it.
So it's just,
piece.
It's interesting how things chains are still hooked together in some ways. Some ways you want to break some of these chains just that aren't productive, but the ones that are productive, it's kind of cool the way the interest can remain the same from one generation to another, and on down the line.
So although I wanted to go back before you started playing bass, you saw that he was playing upright. Did he keep that around? Man, that would have been cool to play.
Oh, it would have been cool to play, but all that stuff. I mean, he went in the service and all that, which was about, I think, after World War II.
So he had to toss
in the Navy, so all that stuff went by the
restore.
wayside, and I don't even know whatever happened. I don't think he ever told me what happened to it. Other than he was proud of the name, the Baling Wire Buckaroos, and that they really had a good time playing together.
Yeah.
And they were really good friends with these guys. They just lived up the holler in Montana, over by Anaconda Opportunity, which says a lot in itself. They lived in a small town called Opportunity.
So Don was born and raised Montana?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And you were born in California. How long did you guys live down there?
Not very long.
Okay.
Because my
That's a
dad
sliver of your life.
My dad had done another tour, or whatever you call it, for the Navy. And so we were living in naval housing units, which were just your basic military installations.
Richmond was a military town?
In that area, yes. And close to Alameda and all that, Bay Area type stuff. So he was gone probably the first almost year of my life when I was born overseas. And so we lived down there till I was probably 2.5, 3 years old. And then once he got out of the service, we moved to Montana and Bozeman to start out with, and then eventually Livingston.
How old were you when you guys went over to Montana?
Probably 3. I've got pictures standing at the back of this big moving truck that he used to move things up to Montana and that. So
the majority of your creative space or creative time of listening and creating is primarily in Montana, and then
that's true.
Inland Northwest, I guess.
That's true, but the influences that had nothing to do basically with Montana. These big band sounds, Lena Horne, all the music that my folks had kind of collected when they were younger.
Mm-hmm.
Those had nothing to do with Montana, because Montana was basically country western from the get-go, and in a lot of ways has kind of stayed that way. So my influences, I didn't really care for country western because that's what the local station would play all the time.
Yeah.
And I'd listen to it and go, well, that's kind of interesting. And if you heard bands in town, they were always country western, playing at these dinner clubs and things like that. And it just didn't motivate me. I liked to hear the big band sounds. I liked to hear, Gene Krupa drumming and Louis Armstrong playing a trumpet.
You couldn't get any of that over the air?
Not really, not in Livingston. They had one radio station, KPRK.
For how long? So I mean, this is 50s. You're born
Early
51,
50s. So you didn't start expanding out till probably like the early 60s.
Okay.
And then the radio station started changing its format because it was a different audience growing up now.
Yeah, it's a long time to not have a variety. That sucks.
Exactly. That's why I kept going to the cupboard and getting out the 78s.
That's how I felt when I grew up in Spokane.
Yeah.
For some reason, I always had this mindset of wanting to break out of the expected average Joe kind of life. But for some reason, I just kept defaulting to only what was coming on the radio.
Exactly.
In Spokane, all the way up to 99, I think.
There's nothing wrong, and I've thought about this quite a bit. There's nothing wrong if somebody chooses the average Joe existence, because that's what does it for them. But for other people, that hunger to expand and grow and learn more, if you really go for it, you'll do whatever it takes. You'll move somewhere else, or you'll start taking records out of the cupboard or whatever, because that's what's feeding you and building that structure, that infrastructure inside of you for music and rhythms and voices and, all these different interpretations, even poetry and things like that. So, yeah, you got to go for it. You got to take that chance, and if you're hungry, you'll get it.
Let's talk about your first chance. You played with quite a few people.
Yeah,
what was your...
In high school.
This is the first group.
Yeah, pretty much so.
First act you created.
The first act that we did was on my parents' in front of their house on a piece of cement. We took the stereo out there. This is when the Beatles and stuff first started. And I went across the street to the people, their name was Case, was the last name. And his dad had a shop in the garage with a lot of plywood and stuff. I made myself a bass guitar out of 1.5-inch plywood and painted it. And then we'd get chords. We'd go over and set up the stereo on front of my folks' house. And we'd have chords that we'd run to the stereo. And then we'd play music on the stereo, and we'd be standing out on the front porch, people driving by. And that was our first, efforts.
That's like your first washboard bass.
There you go. And there was no strings on it. It was just a piece of plywood painted. And in fact, the neighbor kid was the first guy to really get a guitar.
How did you get it to make sound again?
With the stereo.
Well, it didn't. Oh, were you just playing back music and acting like you were playing?
And acting like we were playing.
Oh, I thought you totally put strings, some kind of like makeshift form of a string on there.
It was a one-dimensional bass.
You got to see this one guy. I'll try to find it to share it with you later. He made a. I think imagine a piece of wood like this profile, and it's cut down diagonally like right here. You take a little hook off and flip it up, full length, and it's got this big, thick rubber band going down the whole thing.
Sure.
It's got a pickup, a proper 1/4-inch output on it, and it sounds amazing.
No, we weren't that creative. We were basically
I want one
running
of
off the
those so
Beatles and Stones music coming through the stereo and just
it's a
going through the
pocket
motions.
bass.
Yeah.
Can you imagine how fun that would have been to have
Oh
that?
yeah. I would have yeah.
I won't object with air guitar though, or
If I could have ran into
pretending.
something like that at that time, I surely would have picked it up and started messing with it because I was hungry, to learn how to play.
That definitely takes the cake and is the first band that 100% qualifies.
Oh, we topped the charts every day.
So then
From then it
the
was
next
high
act
school. It was high school.
where you're playing instruments,
A friend of
stringed
mine,
instruments.
and actually 2 kids. One was another guitar player, and the other one was a drummer. And we'd sit in the basement and play songs, covers, Moby Grape, Jefferson Airplane. Try to do that. But we had like a reel-to-reel tape recorder that we stuck a really bright light behind one of the reels. And then so as the reel was going fast, it was like a strobe light, and we'd be playing these songs, and, my friend's sister would come down or the neighbor girls would come over and go, ooh. And it was, it's bogus, but it was the first time we actually did something as 3 people working as one with a strobe light. And it was enough to do it for us at that time. But we never performed outside of the basement somewhere or in the
Psychedelic
garage.
Reaction.
Yeah, it was
I'm the number 1 fan.
it was a garage band, but it was a basement band. It wasn't even a garage band at that point. So
I'm sorry I got too excited. I wanted to reveal the name. It's a really good name.
oh well, what we called ourselves was a psychedelic reaction at that point.
Did it go through to other names?
Nah, it just kind of fizzled out. We got tired of being around each other and went on to other things, after that.
Mm-hmm.
But it was the first time I started building some confidence that I could actually play an instrument and try out for other groups that did play a lot, in that area, Bozeman, Livingston, Gardner.
This is still high school?
Yeah, towards the end of high school, yeah.
Okay. So at this point you look like Austin Powers.
Yeah, basically.
I'm going to put that picture up on the video.
Yep, doing, you had long hair in Montana at that point. You regularly get your ass kicked. And I basically used comedy to get my way out of a lot of situations, so that that didn't happen to me. And I also started working out with weights at that point.
So there was a lot of scary bullying
There was
at school.
Montana, redneck stuff going on.
It's not the Montana of today.
No, it's got all kinds of stuff going on there now. It's become quite civilized, if you want to put it that way. Lots of art, lots of different types of people from all over that have moved there and give it some culture.
Yeah.
So no, it's not even the same place as it used to be. But there are some folks that still live in that era and never changed. Now, the ones who didn't become alcoholics or commit suicide still wander around town with very long beards and hair and are wondering what happened to our old times. They didn't change, which is very unfortunate because I think they missed out on enjoying their lives, for the remainder of their lives and many sad stories about mostly alcohol and some drug situations where people died. But somewhere along the line, they gave up and didn't want to go any further than the good old days and got stuck there and didn't turn out too well for a bunch of them. So at one point when I had hair almost down to my butt, I decided to shave my head because I wanted to be
a picture of that.
I wanted to be liked for who I was and what I could do, and not necessarily for how I looked. And all the girls were saying, "Oh, that's such beautiful hair." You know, it was a magnet thing. And I decided, I had my mom shave my head. She says, "You sure you want to do this?" I said, "Yeah, let's do this." You know, I need to get out from underneath of this thing. And once I did, I felt, you know, almost liberated to pursue other avenues of expression besides having a long, you know, long flowing hair and that type of thing. Now it just kind of takes care of itself, you know. It's but it was something to, you know, it's a growing process. You can't stay in a certain spot forever. It's just not a healthy way to be. So next.
Well, back on track, because I took you off the rail. You're in late high school. You're about to talk about Gardner and acts that I think that you later on joined into.
There was a group, and they started out as the Four Boys, and there were a few groups in Livingston at the time. Some were way older than us, and they'd been around and made themselves quite the name. One of them was called the Misfits, not this Misfits, but the original Misfits. And,
the original? Oh,
yeah,
I didn't
yeah.
know
There was a group
original.
called the Misfits way, way, way back. When I was in junior high school, these guys are playing. They were that much older. And so the other group that came into being was called the Four Boys, and they went by the Dukes at one point. A couple of brothers and a kid from back east. His name was Steve Bruce, was their drummer.
Which is our family friend.
Yeah.
Dear friend and family
Exactly.
friend.
Well, they had a bass player that was actually out of the Misfits that started playing with them. And he also drove truck. And he got into driving truck so much that they started looking for a bass player. And I decided, I'll try out. And I got the dang job. You know, and they had to tell this guy that he was fired, and I was the new bass player.
This was still senior year?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, senior year. And then we played like from 68, 69 through early 70s. And one guy, the lead player, got drafted. So that was kind of the end of that.
Who is that?
Jeff. It's John's brother, Jeff Smith.
Yep, I remember.
And
I remember Jeff.
had a lot of fun. We played a lot. We played the Molly Brown in Bozeman, which is a club that's still there. And we used to play there like 3-4 nights a week, and then come back to Livingston and play the Civic Center, which was the main dance venue for the whole Livingston area. It was the biggest place. And we were working regularly all the time. So that was a lot of fun. And want me to go to the next step?
I'd love to know more, if you have any more, about, so, I mean, if you didn't want to talk more about, because it changed, did you already mention Taylor Brothers, that it turned into Taylor Brothers?
I didn't mention that,
Okay.
no.
So Taylor Brothers is what I personally know. And that's a part of the time up to 70s, right?
Yeah,
Early 70s?
Yeah. When Jeff got drafted and things kind of died down a bit, this other group, which consisted of two brothers, Jerry and Ron Taylor, lead player, rhythm player. Tony Hewitt was the drummer, which it wasn't Steve Bruce, it was Tony Hewitt, it was a different drummer. And we played a lot of places. And
Tony was shorter, big mustache.
Yep, exactly. Now the Ron Taylor in the Taylor Brothers was also a member of that original group of the Misfits. So figure that one out. I took one guy's job, and the other guy ended up playing with, in the long run, and we played a lot. Very popular. It was all cover songs. Allman Brothers, Rolling Stones, Beatles, the same stuff. And that's what drew the crowds and kept everybody hooping and hollering, for 4 or 5 hours in the bar scene. And So got a lot of jobs. In fact, we ended up at one point, there was a couple of movies made. One was made in the Livingston area, which was called Rancho Deluxe. Had Jeff Bridges and I think Sam Watterson, I believe, was in it.
I was looking that up earlier.
Anyway, there's one of the scenes that's a scene at the bar where the main characters are having a conversation. But in the back of the bar, we were playing in the scene, and there was a number of movie stars / writers / that wanted to be on stage with us because they liked music and they liked what we did, and they wanted to be part of that scene. And so they got up on stage, and it was fun. And, you know, you look up the movie.
Don't forget Slim Pickens.
Slim Pickens was there. And the movie still is available to check out. And it's just a brief snippet in the middle of this movie.
Tony Lamas on your jeans pressed tight. Take a few tokes, make you feel alright. Rocking and rolling on a Livingston Saturday night. Got the pickup washed and you just got paid within. And look at all, you might even get laid. Cause you're licking and a kicking on a Livingston Saturday night.
But another thing that I really enjoyed was, though, they shot a movie down by Billings, which is 100-something miles away from Livingston, called Missouri Breaks. And it was Marlon Brando and Jack Nicholson were the main characters. And we knew some people that were involved with having the cast party down in Billings. And so they hired us to play for it. And we thought, okay, that's cool. Made a ton of money, only had to play for maybe 2 hours. We still good on time?
Yeah, please don't mind me.
Okay.
I'm always just looking to make sure that that thing isn't stopping detecting our voices.
So we're setting up in the early afternoon, and a guy comes up to us and he says, "I'm one of the personnel for Marlon Brando." Okay. He wants to know if he can play congas with you tonight when you guys play. Really? I said,
It's a very specific instrument.
Very specific. I said,
it's all about the congas.
That's fine, you know. And so later on the day, the same guy came and set up his gear, knew just exactly how he wanted them set up. We put a mic on the congas. And so Marlon Brando got up for maybe 2 songs and played with us. And of course, there are no cell phones in those days, and maybe the PR people were taking photos. I don't know. Never heard anything else about that. But it was, you know, if I would have been thinking, I would have got his autograph, or, you know, but we were thinking we were pretty cool as far as musicians, and so we didn't want to make too big of a deal out of it. And I knew who Marlon Brando was, but I didn't, you know, it wasn't like I was that awestruck about the whole thing. Mm-hmm. But it was very enjoyable that the guy took the time to be like a regular person and come up with this, you know, this Montana band and sit in, and he was having a great time. He played a couple songs, got off the congas, and went about his business. And yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if he just so happened to have that lying around in his trailer or something.
The guy said that he plays on a regular basis, you know, whether it's to records or whatever, I don't know. You know, I didn't really ask that many questions about it. But he knew what he was doing. I mean, it wasn't like he was just sitting there, you know, banging like a chimp on the, you know, on the bongos like a chimpanzee or whatever. Mm-hmm. We also played a lot up in a place called Gardner, Montana. Place called the 2-Bit Saloon, who was owned by a friend of ours, who was also in a band with Ron Taylor, and I think he was actually the drummer for the original Misfits too. Anyway, we got in Gardner, That's the north entrance to Yellowstone Park, which is a tourist, people come from all over the world to go through Yellowstone. So we'd play up there like for weekends in like a house band type situation. And the influx of people, besides our regulars that came from Livingston because, they were fan, groupie, whatever, and just friends, you had all these folks coming, and it would rotate every other weekend, whole new different bunch of people, but you'd have this huge dance floor, and these people just, you talk about the crowds influence the musicians and singers and stuff like that, and one feeds the other. I mean, that was a perfect situation for that, and it was just really a lot of good time. And then you have to drive all the way back to Livingston at 2 in the morning.
It's not that bad though.
Pardon
It
me?
doesn't take that long to drive.
It doesn't, but if you know as well as I do, you're done playing and you're jacked, from performing, and then you've got to gear down before you can go to sleep. So it was good. You have a friend with you. I had a gal drive me quite regularly. Her name was Rosalie. And
You had a driver?
yeah, just
What?
a friend. And we'd kiss and hug and drive back to Livingston. She'd drop me off, and very wonderful memories, full moon at night, and watching for deer and elk and stuff on the road. Since then, that place is burned. That two-bit saloon burned down to the ground.
Do you know how?
Fire started, I think, in one of the restaurants, because there was a lot of restaurants in that area. And then the two-bit saloon, which was kind of like rooms you could stay in, but at the same time, there's this huge dance floor and bandstand in the back.
Mm-hmm.
And it just totally was razed to the ground. I went up there, my sister and Andrea, my wife, and I went up there one weekend, and they had it all gated off with chain link fence, and you couldn't get in there, because I wanted to go look and, look at the exact area and stuff like that, but you couldn't get in. But I stood out there and I played a song about memory collections soaked in gasoline, and I'm not pointing the finger that somebody torched the place. I'm not saying that at all, but it kind of fitted the situation with the background, with where it used to be behind me through this chain link fence. And then I had my sister record it so that I had a memory. And probably you'll use that somewhere, or parts of it anyway, if you want to.
All my memory collections are soaked in gasoline, and the future longs to light a match, if you know what I mean. Time to lay there waiting for the wrong time to attack, and have no qualm about being. Oh, had no qualm about being. Oh, had no qualm about being. Oh, that pyromaniac on every twig and post, up from the mire, and it balanced in the wind on the surefire tied wire. It's an orthological hallelujah choir. Every breath and every tongue of breathing fire. It's an orthological hallelujah choir.
But there's a lot of memories to those places, and then when it disappears, then all you're stuck with is maybe some old photographs and, I remember the time that, that type of thing. So, moving on.
Well, I just learned a lesson to shut my mouth. I need to not make assumptions about the logistics and the commute of playing shows. I have been out of the excuse me, out of the scene for I think it's now 4 years.
Has it been that long?
Because 2019 I stopped my last band. my solo project goes nowhere. I mean, it's never gonna stop. But like, I mean, playing live, yeah, 2019. And it had nothing to do with COVID. It was before I. It's actually in probably. It had to have been months before anyone in the U.S. was even slightly concerned about COVID at all. It was just kind of lucky timing.
Yeah.
Because I think it would have been brutal to be trying to keep managing something like that at the time, you know, and a lot of people, excuse me, that depend on that part of the economy to actually make their living.
Yeah.
We weren't doing it, and I just needed to focus on my kid and work. But
the thing, one more footnote on this stuff. I know that you've performed, and I know you've performed by yourself and within context of other bands and things like that. But it takes a certain amount of fuck you type attitude to get up in front of people and really sing your heart out or play your heart out, and not care whether, you know, the crowd's going wild or whatever. It takes a bit of coming out of yourself to express yourself like that.
mm-hmm.
And maybe some people come by it quite naturally, but other people, they almost have to, you know, put the proverbial gun to their head before they get up there. And once they do it, they find it's the most enjoyable thing they've ever done in their lives, because they're giving of themselves and they're singing for all they're worth, or they're playing for all they're worth. And it takes so much energy by the time you put in 2, 3 hours, 4 hours, that when you're done, it's just like, oh, you know, you need to, my energy level was such at a high place at those times that it took quite a while for me to gear down to even where you could go to sleep. And so,
Yeah.
because you're kind of reliving parts of the show that went really well, and, you know, and these people had this good time over here and were yucking it up and laughing and everything. And this girl over here was, you know, throwing you kisses and stuff like that. And so it's memories being made. And if you wouldn't have stood up, if you wouldn't have opened your mouth and took that chance, you might not ever have that kind of experience. And to me, those are really special times, even though it was somebody else's, they were all cover songs, somebody else's music, somebody had done it way better than we could, but it just happened to be the popular thing at the time, and so you drew all these people in. There was still some craft to it. And
I don't want anyone to forget, or I would add on top for anyone that doesn't know, that it's also never too late to be looking at things that way, and to doing anything that you want to do. There's never the best time is when it's just when you feel like doing it. And if it's 10 years later, fine. If it's now, fine.
Yep.
I talk to so many people. They say, "Oh, I want to play guitar really bad." I'm like, "Then do it." And so many. I think every time they're like, "Well, I don't have time.
mm-hmm.
It's too late." And it's like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
There's no such thing.
If a
You
person,
could see someone playing a damn solo on a guitar with a nub arm. You can do whatever the hell you want to do at any age.
and to encourage people, you know, that if you're hungry enough and if you really want it bad enough, nothing can stop you. And you'll find a way to do it.
And go into it. Be scared. It's terrifying.
Oh, yeah.
Just like everything is.
You
You hear a
don't know-
lot of people saying that they're scared of it too, or they're worried about what people think. And it's
yeah.
like, well, you're never going to know what anyone thinks because you didn't do it.
Yep.
All you're living in paranoia, assumptions made that will never occur.
That's true. And there's a whole new dimension to that as far as when you start writing and doing your own music in front of people, because that old thing comes up again. Just like initially when you first got up playing, you know, the Rolling Stones or Allman Brothers, wow, I wonder how this sounds. Is this good enough? So when it's something that is part of your experience, part of your life, that you've taken the time to write the words down, to form it into music, to have beginnings and ends and middles and open spots for solos for other people and other players, all of a sudden that's your baby, that's your guts out there. So you really have to almost come around to the place again where I do anyway, is, I'm not saying fuck you to people. I'm saying to my fears, fuck you, I'm going to do this because I really think that there's something valuable here that's not just something that I can hum staring at a wall in my basement somewhere, but that it's got some value to somebody else that may be going through some of the same things or have gone through it, or maybe in a couple of years are going to go through it, and they might remember a line or just come up and talk to you afterwards.
On that note, I think it's quite relevant to think. I've never actually asked you about during the time 60s, 70s when you're doing the stuff with Taylor Brothers and others. Did you also, like the last 30, 40 years that I know of, were you doing your own thing in parallel? Or when
At that time?
Or when did it start?
It didn't. There was nothing like that. I never had the confidence to sit down and write anything. And they did what was it? Montana had a bicentennial thing that went on. And this was kind of after a lot of these groups that I was in kind of settled in the dust a bit. And we were asked to write something for this bicentennial. There was a guy that I went to high school with. It was in the film and television department, just like Steve Bruce was at Montana State, who was doing this project. And so he knew us, and he said, can you guys come and play some background music for this thing? So I sat down, and that was the first time I really thought about writing. I'd written some poetry off and on, but this was something specifically musically inclined. And I was living in a little cabin out of town of Livingston, about 7 miles out or whatever, with a wood-burning stove and a wood-burning oven to cook things with and stuff like that. And so I wrote. Now, it never got used, but it helped me to break out of thinking that I could only do cover songs, or I was only good enough to sound like so-and-so on the bass, or like the vocals, the stuff that had already been done. And I prepped up a song, and they used, all I ended up doing in the end was doing a harmonica part for it, which is fine. I was disappointed because they didn't want it and they chose something else, but not disappointed enough to stop and to have learned that if I apply myself and think things through and take the time to write it and rewrite, that there's an ability there to communicate and to express. And that was the time that I actually started. And then from then it just kind of built. But up to that point, I was too afraid to move out of that zone, out of the cover band zone thing, because we had something that worked here, and I sure as heck didn't want to be out of a job. So I just stuck with the program. And
yeah, it was a lot of that linear thinking culture that was just, we just want you to cover the greatest and latest.
Yep. Something that we can
don't
relate
care
to.
about what you want to make on your own.
Yeah, exactly. And there were people doing it back then. I mean, because these songs had to come from somewhere, but it sure as heck wasn't from the folks that I was hanging out with or myself.
Yeah, it was probably a tough time going. And then maybe did you know a lot of people that ended up having to do what I did when, I graduated high school, and I knew the day after I graduated, I'm getting everything in this car and I'm going to Seattle Because I'm sick and tired of this place holding me down.
I did that. I moved to Missoula because I wanted to be around. At that point, Missoula was like the place where you could grow your hair and do
Okay.
your thing. And Livingston still wasn't. People were still getting the crap.
It's Montana,
kicked out of
Seattle,
them.
and Portland, Oregon kind of thing.
Exactly.
Still feels like that today.
I didn't know of too many people, though. People were afraid that if they didn't work for the railroad, which was the main source of income for that area for many years until they eventually pulled out and left them high and dry, and all these people that had been working for 20 years had to find jobs in North Dakota or Minnesota or whatever, and relocate their families that they'd have already started to build at that point. They were afraid to move out of that. But the ones that hung back, again, fell into a lot of depression, alcoholism, things like that. Eventually, before the railroad pulled out, some of these people got to where they could retire, but then they retired into,
Almost like a
well, I'm
vegetative state.
gonna mow the lawn today. I'm gonna think about how things used to be in the good old days, and worry about all these new people coming in and ruining our country and our state and our town. And it really, the really sad ending to a lot of these folks. And but they were afraid. They didn't want to go outside the box at all, because it was a stable situation for a lot of years with that railroad in there.
So about when did you really feel like you broke free from allowing your confidence to be chaining you down, and your own personal struggles and those causing it, the surrounding kind of influences that are holding you back? When did you finally just feel like you're like, okay, I'm really cleansed from this now. I'm on my own track now. I'm Davis. I'm Michael Davis now.
Kind of a stepping point to that was, I thought that if I moved where the long-haired drug culture was in Missoula, that I'd be very happy. And to be honest with you, it turned around that I ran into the same kind of prejudice, long hairs against other people, as I was experiencing in Livingston with the rednecks being prejudiced against long hair or beads or this type of thing. And I was very, very disenchanted with that whole thing. Moving on, writing, I've been married twice now. And in my first marriage, I was writing some songs, and a lot of it was related to church type issues. But I was going even beyond the box on that type of stuff, because there was enough hymns as far as I was concerned. So I was writing about some of the parts of the Bible that some people don't find it scares them a bit, or it causes them to, they want to choose to read about the love of Christ and the love of God and everything, but they don't want to look to the part where, God gets fed up and comes down and levels Gomorrah or whatever. And I felt that if I was a believer, that I'm going to believe in the whole thing and not just the portions that kind of make me feel, this type of thing. That was I really enjoyed that, because they came quite naturally. And the first time that I sang in front of a church, and the pastor had asked me to do this, I said, sure. I sang a song, and it almost split the church. Because it didn't line up with the doctrine of some of the established members of this church. And I was just singing, the lines came to me quite naturally, the verses, the chorus, the beginning, the end, the kazoo solo. So I was just doing what I felt, what came naturally.
Mm-hmm.
And it caused such a ruckus. And I thought, you got something here. I wasn't doing that. I wasn't doing that to try to cause division. I was trying to they asked me to sing and I sang.
Yeah, although that's sad, it's also really cool. I mean, I don't think any artist is gonna not see that and be like, whoa, I just divided a whole community. I mean, you just hope that you first hope that you have a turnout of any sort at a show. But a church community can be very large, 500 people, 400, 300 people,
and very stringent.
And then you cause that kind of ripple in that. Even if it was 100 people, that's a crazy milestone, I think, as an artist. Whether that was a good thing or a bad thing, I'm sure that has some negative impact on people. But man, that's cool though. How intense is that?
It did, in the sense that also sometimes when people talk about churches, they talk about oneness and they talk about how we're all, moving forward as a group with all the same beliefs and doctrines and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But when something is added in there, not intentionally to cause any problems, but just added in because it was requested, it reveals the division that already exists. Because there are some people that thought one way and some people thought another way. Some people were listening to the lyrics and they were going, yeah. And other people were going, what? That shakes my very foundation. And it had nothing to do with my ego that happened. But there are other pieces of music that I have even now that talk about some of the same things. And it will be used. I try to write love songs about my relationships and observations, with the wind and things like that. But there are also some things that my attitude is, if this doesn't, if I'm not talking about you right now, and it doesn't cause you to be angry or think about things or whatever, then don't worry about it. Just listen to it, and hum along or tap your foot or whatever. But if it shakes your foundation to get you to think, to get you to go beyond where you're so comfortable and rigid, then I'm going to go, yeah, that's exactly why I'm doing this, because everything that comes out of me has been filtered through my being for a number of years now. Mm-hmm. And so I'm not just grabbing something off the wall and throwing it out there and see how it's going to affect people. It's stuff that's affected me down in my very core and caused me to grow, move on, caused me to unfold even more so. Come to realization, that I haven't arrived, that there's always somewhere you can go and become more and be more healthy. So
yeah.
Talk about a derailment.
I don't think so. I never actually really talked to you about that before. I guess we've always kind of discussed a timeline, but it's never that simple. There's always a mass amount of parallels that are going on in that timeline, and it's really important and really special to know along the way how do things become almost unlocked like achievements as an artist. What makes us feel more free as we go on, more confident.
And I'm also learning not to tell the whole story right off the bat and hold some stuff back that meant a lot to me or caused changes in me, but not necessarily feeling the need to bring it up at a certain point. And later on down the line, oh yeah, there was a time that, and it's a memory, and to share it with people. And now they know a little bit more about you than they knew before. And that maybe now there's better understanding of, well, who is this person? Where are they coming from? Why do they live the way they do? Why do they say what they say? You know, what direction are they going? And is it some place that I want to go, or is it some place that I want to look at and listen to maybe a little bit, but I'm going over this way? And that's perfectly fine. I'm not looking to build a church, you know, or to, you know, people to bow down at my feet for any reason at all. If the music talks to you, fine. If it doesn't, so be it. I hope I haven't wasted your time.
Yeah, my perspective as a small kid, and then being your son, and then being a fellow artist and musician, I've observed, I think, that I could kind of not generalize you in a bad way, like I think I've categorized you into a factual musician, factual writer. A lot of, like, pretty much most of everything you write about is really experiences, people's lives. It doesn't lack imagination, but for the most part, it seems very factual. I was just thinking about that in my head now, because my whole experience from the very start till now has been crazy fictional writing. Like I'm the total opposite from you, and it was never intentional. It's just the place that I like to be lost in is like worlds and people and feelings, things that can be real for real people existing in our world as a human, but they're made up. Like, I think about them like a whole world and a planet, or a being or an environment that's totally out of a comic book or a book that someone wrote. And yours is like this opposite. So kind of, I'm just thinking about that right now. I thought it was pretty interesting. Go ahead.
So if I say to you, in all honesty, and it might be factual, I'm dealing these cards from the top of the deck, but betting it all has made me a physical wreck. It's royal flushes for the privileged, or so I've been told. Then it's aces and eights when you're getting too old. So herein lies the question: are you in, or are you going to fold? And hey, by the way, did you say what they paid on the day you got sold?
Amen.
So vignettes, things to think about. And, you know, I guarantee you that I've laid awake many nights going over 10 verses in a song so that I don't leave anything out, because it consecutively builds, and it might change subject matter, but it's all consistent with the statement that's being made. And even there's an escape route at the end that says, well, I guess I've gone and rambled on too long, but I had something to say, so I put it in this song. Now, you probably stopped listening back a verse or two, but sometimes it's the only way that I can talk to you, or even myself. Lord only knows how long this has all been inside, but it's out on the table now with no place to hide. And it gives a listener, maybe they drifted during the 7th verse or whatever, and that's fine. Maybe part of it caught their attention, maybe part of it didn't. But you give them an out at the very end, that it's okay, because it's all out now. And you take what you need and leave the rest. It's perfectly fine with me. Thank you for allowing me to put it out there for you. And thank you for listening. It's as good as it gets.
I wanted to go into something specific, but I may.
But I threw you off the rail again, eh?
No. I tend to default to blaming myself.
Yeah, I've done a lot of that too. And
Do you feel like you went this factual way of writing on purpose? Was that intentional?
I don't know. I try to pay attention and I try to take notes. And if there's, sometimes it's like a sentence, sometimes it's a dream, sometimes it's just a feeling, reading something or looking at a photograph, and all of a sudden it starts rolling out. And so the main thing with me is I try to stay with what has fashioned me to the point that I am now at 72 years old, and not talk about stuff that I don't know about, because I don't think people necessarily take you seriously if you're blabbing on about this and that and the other thing, and you don't have a clue what you're talking about. You just kind of heard somebody say something, so now you're saying it. So whether it's factual, basically everything that's affected me, I think, for the most part, is factual. And I can't talk about what I don't know, because I don't want to waste your time with that. You probably know much more about it than I do, and I'd rather sit and listen to you talk about it. Buying cables, having a podcast. There's a lot of stuff I don't know, but what I do know, that's what I've held on to, and that's what I've tried to build. That's what I rehearse in my mind over and over and over again, so that my phrasing is correct, and the cadence of things, the way you say things. Don't put too much in a certain area that causes people to stumble, but make it so it fits. And sometimes it's down to the very lowest common denominator. The amount of words, the fewer they are, and still get the gist of what you're trying to say is what you want to put out there. And I took a poetry class a long, long time ago. And
College or high school?
It was neither. Well, no, that's not true. I took a writing class when I was in college at Whitworth here in Spokane area. But before that, there was a guy who was a poet that I met for some reason. They used to have a thing downtown at the one of the clubs. They had a poetry thing every Wednesday or something like that. And so I thought, well, heck, I could try that. And so I wrote a few small things and then went in and performed it just off the cuff. And he said, you want to sit down with me and let me look at your stuff, and I'll help you to rewrite, to learn how to rewrite. Now, the stuff that I performed is very concise and they were very short snippets of things, and they were complete. He had no problem with that. But as he was reading through some of my notebooks, he said, okay, why do you think you need to put those extra words in there when you already said it? You don't want to bore people with too many this or that, kind of like I am maybe now. I don't know. You'd have to judge this on your own. But it was a really important lesson, because I did start going back and kicking this out, kicking that out. But at the same time, you got a guy like Dylan who can stuff a shitload of words into a verse, and
You're talking about Bob Dylan?
Yeah, Bob Dylan. And it's very effective. It tells a complete beginning and end of a thought. It's completed. And you want to do the chorus now? Okay, fine. If you don't, do another verse. So there's not like a cut and dry way of doing everything all the time. It's the expression, and what are you trying to say, and is it something that somebody else can catch a hold of or listen to or want to listen to? Are you holding their interest long enough? Or are you boring to them and boring to yourself, and maybe you need to cut back a little bit. Maybe you just need to sit there and shut the fuck up and not say anything and just look at them and go, hi.
STFU. Yeah, I meant to make a shirt that said that.
Yeah.
My coworker and I had the idea, but we made it to a different abbreviation that was work related.
Yep.
We were trying to see if we could make the joke get by without anyone knowing.
I worked at a hospital here for 20-something years, almost 30 years, and I had on my badge MMOB, no, MMOFB, and I put periods behind it, but I had it on my badge. What it meant was I'm minding my own fucking business. And nobody ever got it, you know.
No one ever asked you what it meant?
No. Well, there was a few people that
That
night
must be
shift
an amazing skill he has.
night shift people were kind of off the wall anyway, working night shifts at cardiac intensive care unit. But, you know, and I used to go by MD, and then they made me change
Yep.
that because people were thinking I was a doctor and I wasn't. But yeah, that's basically what I'm doing right now. My
Or you're
son,
a toilet paper.
Pardon me?
Or you're a toilet paper.
Yeah.
MD. I don't know if it's still around.
Well, people used to call me Mad Dog at a certain point in my musical career.
Did you ever drink Mad Dog 2020?
Yeah, a long, long time ago. Yeah.
I would like us to be able to wrap up with what is going on with you currently and any other thoughts you have recently on how things have been going for you now, your current experiences as a musician in every facet that you're trying to progress in. But before we do that, though, I have to know. Okay, so your favorite instrument is what of all time?
The one that I enjoy the most is the voice.
So,
Yes?
before you continue on that, does that actually change your first instrument then?
You mean the ukulele story?
Yeah, because I mean, it could
Oh,
possibly not. If you
gotcha.
didn't know to sing
Gotcha.
before the ukulele, then it wasn't your first. But I'm curious, since that's your favorite.
When I was listening to those 78s and all that stuff of my folks's and all that, I couldn't wait to get my hands on a tape recorder. You know, because like all kids, you want to hear a fart sound and you want to make goofy sounds and stuff like that. You want to hear your own voice. And it was a Montgomery Ward's, you know, really cheapy type thing. So it probably wasn't anywhere near your real tonal, you know, part of your voice. But it was enough to make...
There's probably 500 people out there that will try to find what you're talking about now.
Yeah.
Or have found and paid way too much for it, just for the beautiful degradation of the way that the tape behaves.
There's a lot of people, and I'll say this as kind of like a footnote, that hate the sound of their voice. You know, and as soon as they hear it recorded on something, they go, "Oh, I don't like the sound of my voices." Well, I had to come through that too, and I still do at times, thinking that I need to put an effects on some vocals or whatever. And not that I hate the sound of my voice, but it takes some getting used to. I almost have to disconnect myself and just listen from another viewpoint to what's being sung, and then going, yeah, that's the way it sounded in my head. That'll do. That's the copy that I want right there. But there's still some things I'm still critical about with my voice and that. And so what I try to do is these exercises and to try to different octaves, different note ranges and things like that. Scat.
Be careful. Some people only know scat to be poop.
Oh, yeah, I poop out my mouth. No. It's like, it's Ella Fitzgerald, it's Dizzy Gillespie, it's, you know, all these people that just, bam.
Yeah, Dizzy with salt peanut.
Exactly.
My favorite song.
But those things, that affected me back then, I wanted to be able to do that. And even if I didn't know the words or hadn't written a song for such a long, long time, I could always syncopate along with what was going on, even if it made no sense. There weren't really words. They were just sounds that you were doing. And then totally in school, drumming on the desktop, slapping your leg, whatever. But that was wanting to know what I sounded like and then coming to the place where I would even accept that it was good enough. And again,
We were talking about that.
shifting back to cover songs and things like that, and feeling like you were doing a good enough job that it was, how can you ever compete with some of these folks that wrote these songs and that's their stories? But doing it because you wanted acceptance or you wanted a job or you wanted to make some money or whatever. I've had to come through that part of that, sitting alone after the divorce of my first marriage in an apartment and writing and using a wall for like a monitor to hear what I was singing.
Yeah.
And then going over and over and over it till I got to the point where, yeah, this works, this fits, this I enjoy this.
That's a great idea.
I could listen to this a lot.
Yeah.
And it wasn't because it was me. I just enjoyed what the product was that I was trying to work on. And so even now, if I could have in-ear monitors all the time, I would be really happy, because I want to hear all the players, even if it's just two. And I want to hear the mix. And I want to hear, did I slide up that octave clean? Did I jump to there, jump back to there? And it's precise, and it's not perfect, but it was done with the heart and soul. And so therefore it works, and I can walk away with no regrets. I'm proud of that. Want to listen to it? And sometimes it's yes, and sometimes it's no.
That helps it make a lot of sense to me from our conversation that we had offline about how there are more musicians than you can count that hate to hear their own voice, and your response is refreshing. In my perspective, you've worked through that and found how you can separate yourself.
Yes.
From. It's almost like kind of like this book I was reading, Untethered Soul. It's about allowing things to move through you, allowing yourself to sit back away behind your eyes, behind your body, and not dwelling on things, dwelling on what that voice is. Are you picking up what I'm putting down?
Correct.
Like it's almost like you were able to set it aside as an actual, like it is a guitar.
Yep.
Instead of being like, oh, I was nasally that day, or.
And I can't speak for anybody else, and I don't know what it looks like from the outside unless I watch. We did an hour show in Bozeman for a radio station that was all recorded and everything, and I didn't know what the heck I looked like. Am I making a goofy face when I reach these notes?
I hope so.
But coming to the place, for me, it has nothing to do with my ego at all. It's coming from a place of acceptance and realizing for myself that that's good enough. That expression was good enough. And sometimes I just need to feel secure and motivated to continue on, knowing that that was good enough. I don't need to sit and criticize or look at myself too much or whatever. It's like, and even watching the performances when people have taped and stuff like that, I'm listening to the heart and soul of what's coming out of my mouth, or the rhythms of a mandolin or a conga drum or whatever. Is that what's working? Because it doesn't make a fucking bit of difference what I think I look like or don't look like. I tried to dress up a little bit because I want to make a special occasion out of these events that I'm allowed and have the honor to take place in. But at the same time, that's the best I can do. I feel comfortable in this shirt. I feel comfortable in this jacket. I like the horse pin. I like the coyote.
You like the small dead animal on your microphone?
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
So what you're trying to say is
What I'm trying
that
to
your
say...
favorite instrument, yes, it is the voice.
Yes.
But did it come first? Chicken or the egg? Voice or the ukulele? We need to solve this before we move on.
The voice, because I had to listen to my own voice long before I picked up that ukulele. And even before I had any kind of intonation that whether I could say that was good or bad, the sound of my voice, or be critical of it, that came later, the critical part of it. But I talked to myself a lot as a kid, playing soldiers, vroom, with a little toy motorcycle and stuff like that.
It's a trick question. Unless you're a mute, everyone's first instrument is their voice. Maybe.
So that's why you're the podcaster and I'm the pod.
I'm casting. Okay.
Ooh,
Okay.
so
Let's wrap up with what's been going on with you lately.
Okay.
And any further thoughts?
I had the pleasure of working with some folks in the Bozeman area, and it's like a almost 400-mile commute. So I learned basically their whole catalog, about 2.5, 3 hours worth. And
Called?
Oh, Under the Umbrella is the name of the group. And you got Leah, you got Neil, you got Dean, you got John. And most of the material that they did was what they had written. In the past groups prior to this, I was one of the lead guys, did most of the lead vocals besides Steve Bruce, who was the other main writer. And it was very refreshing to be a side guy, but not just, sitting in the back with a tambourine, really adding to the situation that they were trying to produce. And it was their project. It affected, they're all involved in the mental health situation in the Bozeman area, which is quite widespread. They've all had some experience in those things, so they all are still going through things, but music is that thing, like you said earlier, that brings people together and causes you to look at things a little bit differently, not just listening to it, but performing it. So that folded up. I was also involved with a group in the Missoula Whitefish area, which again is a long ways to travel, but I was doing it because I felt it was worth it. It was worth the time and effort. So both those things are kind of on hold for now. So I'm working with a guy that I've known from Livingston for a long time. His name's Mark Flanigan. And he's had classical training, jazz, honky-tonk, rock and roll, progressive. I mean, he's like a Swiss Army knife of keyboard players.
He was he not a professional pianist at a certain point?
He did perform, he did concerts and stuff like that, but I think that was under the guise of his training as being a student of so-and-so. There was a gal named Urena Clark that used to live in Livingston who was an excellent piano teacher, and he sat under her guise for some time, and then they'd do like concerts and stuff like that, or what do they call it, recitals. He's played with a number of groups in the Livingston area.
Yeah, he sounds like he could just sit down with a symphony anytime.
And he can. And he can figure things out really well. He reads music like crazy. He knows the terminology, which I don't still.
For anyone else, though, this is my mom's cousin.
Correct.
And I just consider an uncle.
Yep.
And he's also been an influence on me with piano. you were my influence with leaving your instruments around, whether that was just you being messy or intentional. I give every
who knows?
parent that advice to
Yeah.
try to leave as many instruments of creativity all over the place.
But at the same time, keeping an eye on your Gibson, and know what the kids' intentions are. If they're just looking for something to hit with a drumstick, then of course they need to be guided and shown. Well, if you're really serious about this, I'll sit down with you and let you strum on it. But to teach kids the proper way to pick up these tools and to start to learn how to use them is very, very important, and not just something to bang against the wall, or just another aspect of just letting your kids run wild and not teaching them to respect tools that can be really important to them in their lives.
Totally.
So anyway.
But so back with Mark and Under the Umbrella. So you've been doing under the umbrella. You've been in a collaborative project under the umbrella, with them already existing and inviting you into that fold for probably the last year or so.
Yeah, it was over a year.
And you've been, I would say maybe the last 2 years, at least, things have been building up much more seriously as Mark's come over here.
Yes.
To where you guys can start to work together and work on, again, and come back to working on your own stuff.
Yep.
Not other people's, not covers, not other people's work. Because sometimes it seemed like, if I go back in time with the Taylor brothers, it's kind of like being in the shadow of their creativity there, in a way. I'm not trying to say it was a negative thing. That was my perspective, though. And when I witnessed you getting away from coming back to Montana and playing with a lot of those people you played with before, I saw more of, okay, this is you, this is Davis, this is Michael Davis, this is MD. So coming up again now, last couple of years, you and Mark have been getting together. He's helping you do more of your solo work, more of what is you.
Yep. He's like having two or three more people, because he's so diverse.
Multifaceted.
Oh yeah. And in fact, I've talked to him about, I play guitar on a lot of these things, or mandolin, or just vocals. But I wanted to come to the place where he knows the material so well, because he's absorbed it, and he can, it's almost like when I take a breath, he's taking a breath, and not stringent, a stick up the ass tightness, but that we are playing in such together or in unison, that if I decided to put the guitar down and just do vocals, he would know all the spots. The raises, the lulls, the rests, the places that I've given him some space for solos, and it's not like I'm giving him permission. But some of the songs that I've written, I can't do solos, and he surely can, and he likes it. So therefore, we're doing it that way. We just gotten started just since like January again. We've played before together a number of times. He's been out here and we've recorded some other songs before. But we just started again, and it's more focused now, just like you were saying, for a certain direction, and not just sitting in the basement, reliving the good old days. It's got some feet. We're growing some feet to it, and
where do you see your biggest challenges are right now with exposure, booking, writing, recording for your work as what you created?
I know you're not supposed to think this way, but I still do at times. I just turned 72, March 15th. And
Happy late birthday.
oh, yeah, I had a wonderful birthday party a couple days ago, actually. With what I've collected, what I've taken notes on, what I've taken the time to rehearse and know inside and out, and if I have to accompany myself, I can, or I'll just sing it a cappella. It doesn't matter to me. But trying to figure out, and I look at, you look at what's going on all the concerts, and you got 12 dancers and pyrotechnics and you name it, it's out there.
Backup singers.
And backup singers.
3 drummers.
And like stacks and stacks and stacks of equipment that alters voices, blah, 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 all this stuff. I want to be able to put out a product that's clean. And if I was sitting in somebody's front room and still have the same effect from it as if I had an amplifier with me or if I had Mark with me. But is it still pertinent, I think is the word. Is it still something that can affect, if I'm singing about baby birds, or if I'm singing about the end of the world, or if I'm singing about, being addicted to this or doing that, is there space there that could reach a wide audience of people and be effective? And if I look at, what people say, well, you already know that there's like millions of songwriters out there, and they're not getting anywhere, and they're going to Memphis, and they're going this place and that place to try to make it, and you got to go this way, you got to go over here to get heard, and some of that is true.
Well, it's not realistic for a lot of people either.
It isn't.
To just bust butt over to Los Angeles or New York or bigger hubs.
But the number of people who quit and give up is probably astronomical, because maybe the first 6 or 7 times they put themselves out there and there was no response, or there's very little response. And so they're stuck with, not knowing whether that was good or, not getting any kind of response or encouragement. And you got to press on. You got to press on, because sometimes you ain't going to get a lot of response. But if something is good, it's going to be effective. And if it's not, then maybe you should, put that on the back burner and try something else that you've written.
Mm-hmm.
But don't ignore the catalog and think that, well, I tried it twice now, it's not going to work. Because a lot of time it is timing. Being in the right place at the right time and being willing to stand up and go, hey, I'll scat for you right now. Or I'll sing this song about my dad. Or I'll sing a song about whatever, things that I know about. This is who I am. This is part of my life. And like I said before, you can take it or leave it. It's fine. My feelings aren't hurt, and it's not going to make me stop, because this is what I've got. I feel like this is what I've got to do for the rest of my life, however long that's going to be, and I don't plan on quitting. And I believe in the material enough to know that the content has got some draw to it, I guess is what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess my biggest thing and my biggest fear is that if I'm too critical about myself, that I'll stop. And it kind of, you go full circle, and you can sit in a room by yourself playing your own music and saying fuck you to your fears and your criticism and everything else that tries to, you just need to stop.
Mm-hmm.
And if it isn't good enough, sooner or later, you'll get the message and you go, okay, well, I gave it a shot. But you always want to take the opportunity when it arises to do the best that you can. Whether it's 2 people, 100 people, 1,000 people, or a podcast or whatever. If this is really the way you feel, then you damn well better express it. Because otherwise, nobody's going to know. And it may be good for somebody else too. You just never know. So you can can it all up and push it all down and take your dying breath and never have tried, or you can make an effort. And if you're hungry enough for other people's reasoning, not just your own, and to showcase other people's talents, like a Mark Flanigan or a Steve Bruce or a John Smith or a Laurie Smith or the folks back in Bozeman, you got to keep playing. I mean, that's what you are. That you're a singer, you're a songwriter, you're a poet. You can slap your knees and keep time to the music. Whatever it is that does it for you, it's contagious with other people too.
Awesome. Thank you for doing this.
It's been an honor and a pleasure. And I wouldn't
too.
say that if I didn't mean it.
So soon Mark will actually be here, be joining you to play together. Do you want to tell everyone what you're going to be playing, or would you like to leave that a mystery and up to the audience's ears and perception of what you're going to perform?
I think for the sake of explanation or background, I guess I would put it would be a better way, or backstory or whatever. The one song for sure that we're going to do is the song that I wrote the day I got married to my second wife. And I performed it on a hillside in Montana overlooking the Paradise Valley. And I meant it then, and I mean it now. And it's taken on more meat as the time has gone on. Things that I meant a certain way at that time have now taken on a different viewpoint, constructive, progressive, and made it even more wanting me to express that feeling. And the other one, I'd probably like to do 2 of them, but I don't know about the other one yet. I haven't really decided yet. I'm going to take your advice on the first one, and it is a wedding song. There's not really a name for it, but I think that
I think it's called A Wedding Song.
based on facts again, factual. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. And if it ever came to the point where I needed to break it down even more so, the verses are very, very short, but the chorus encapsulates all of it from beginning to end and makes it like one complete product, or one complete expression of gratitude and hopes for the future.
For anyone that wants to hear, read any of your work, where can they find those projects? So like Under the Umbrella, they have a website and Instagram, don't they?
Yeah, they do. And the main one that was actually filmed was done at a radio station in the Bozeman area. And it's about an hour-long show, and there's a brief. The host asks us a few questions here and there. But the people that I played with are really quality people, all of them. And
I'll see if I can find it.
The only one that's really missing from there, well, there's actually 2 people. Eddie, Ed spelled E-D-D, who plays lead guitar, and Marley, who's a cello player that I had the pleasure of, the last gig that we played as Under the Umbrella, she was playing in that one. And sound of a cello in the midst of all this other stuff was just so wonderful and deep and resonating. And I hope to sometime in the future work with her again, as well as some of these other folks, but on my own projects. And we talked about these things, and because of distance, 400 miles and this type of thing, it's hard to get together at the drop of a hat.
Mm-hmm.
But there is interest, and I send them things occasionally to just, give them a taste of whatever, where I'm at and what I'm working on and that type of thing. And there is interest, but like I say, the distance is a big factor. And they are busy people because they play in various other situations. But there are signs of interest. So.
Well, I will, for everyone listening and watching, I'll find out what the Instagrams are from you later, and I'll put them in the details.
Okay.
Because I would also like to share yours. You have a social media presence on Instagram, and that's still really, I have to say, that is massively helpful for a lot of people to network.
I'm not so much on Instagram as I am on Facebook. I've got an Instagram account, but I've not really put a whole lot on there. It's kind of easier for me with the Facebook thing, because I'm not real big on knowing a whole lot about, the internet and all this stuff. I wanted to be a performer and a storyteller, and at times my excuse is I don't want to figure out how to get it out there. I want to be the guy that rehearses it and then presents it, and somebody else that really knows about getting it out there can do that, because my time is consumed with what I'm doing. And although I do know how to get on the phone and talk and text and all this other stuff, I don't want to get too far into that because my mind is somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And the people who are much better than I am can do that and do a good job of it.
Okay,
and that's
fine.
their part.
I will help you. I'll help you. It's the metaverse now. So once you've got Facebook, you've got an Instagram. But thankfully, it is still a very strong source for artist marketing,
yes,
sales, exposure, networking. And yeah, it'll die, and something else will come along.
Yeah.
But it's still the necessary evil, especially for a lot of independent builders and artists and musicians.
Oh, I'm not opposed to any of it at all. And I want to know.
Rather spend your time
wanna,
focusing on what you like to do.
Yeah,
I don't think you really like dealing with the social media technology very much.
No. But I'm not saying that the next thing that comes along, would I participate in it with what my tool is to add into the mix? Sure, I don't mind. But if you know what you're doing and I know what I've done and am doing, then let's get together and promote something that can further spread that out so that more people can enjoy or get angry at or have their church split or whatever because of this material. Then I feel more than fulfilled because I've done my part. So.
Thank you. So next, we're going to break down here, and then everyone will see you and Mark play some music. Hopefully a couple songs.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
On a hill in Montana, overlooking the Paradise Valley, about 17 years ago, this is how I felt, and this is how I still feel. 1, 2, 3, 4. Can I live without you? I suppose that I could, but I would that to be living. Can I live without you, baby? I suppose that I could, but I would not consider to be living. But I can't when it's dark. Let me know when you get home. Can I live without you? I suppose that I could, but I would not consider to be living. Can I live without you, baby? I suppose that I could, but I would not consider to be living. Let me hold you while you rest. Run my fingers through your hair. I'll live without you. I suppose that I could, but I would not consider to be living. So can I live without my children? I suppose that I could, but I would not consider to be living. Mr. Flanigan. Can I live without you? I suppose that I could, but I would not consider to be living. Can I live without you, honey? I suppose that I could, but I would not consider to be living. Find your voice and sing with me. Could I live without you? I suppose that I could, but I would not consider to be living. Can I live without you, children? I suppose that I could, but I would not consider. No, I would not consider. No, I would not consider to be living. I would not consider. Hey, listen to that wind blow. When the wind blows, there's doors that'll open and there's doors that'll close. But where we come from, only heaven knows. But that's the way it is when the wind blows. 'Cause when the wind blows, it's just the way that it is. And it's not because I said so. It's just the way that it is, it is, it is, it is, yeah. Adam and Eve had a little spat. He said, this is this. And Adam said, I thought it was that. She said to he, if you'd only listen to me, you had some kind of a clue as to which way the wind blew. 'Cause when the wind blows, it's just the way that it is. Whoa. And it's not because I said so. It's just the way that it is. It is, it is, it is, yeah. Here's another well-known wind fact. Like going downhill when it's at your back. But up you get so things get real slow. But that's the way she goes when the wind blows. 'Cause when the wind blows, it's just the way that it is. And it's not because I said so. It's just the way that it is, it is, it is, it is, yeah. Go ahead, Mr. Flanigan. God spoke to Job from out of a whirlwind. I see at your beginning, and I know how this thing ends. You got the nerve to tell me you ain't done nothing wrong. Well, you best lend an ear to this here wind song. 'Cause when the wind blows, it's just the way that it is. And it's not because I said so. It's just the way that it is, it is, it is, it is, yeah. Oh, won't you please listen, please listen, please listen. Why don't you listen to the wind blow? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, buddy.
Thanks for joining us on our latest episode. To like, follow, and subscribe to our audio and video podcast, check us out at scienceofsound.us, at Science of Sound on YouTube, and at Science of Sound Official on Instagram. You can also email me directly at cody.lane@scienceofsound.us. Get lost in the sound with us next time on
Science of Sound.